Okay, well, now that the presidential election has officially been called, I believe that it is time for a good old celebration. So let's just give ourselves say a good 15 seconds to just, literally just freak out for a sec. Okay, ready? Set, go. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckisphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Monday and Thursday with some other videos sprinkled in along the week, we cover everything relating to the climate crisis here. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. And so if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button below, click the like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And today we are going to talk about what the Biden administration will be able to do for the climate. Now that the election has officially been called and we know that the president-elect is Joe Biden, this is honestly an amazing time for the environmental movement. It is huge, and that should not be underestimated. I feel like it's important to just emphasize how big this is, because this is a huge moment in the environmental movement. This is a huge moment for everyone. And the reason why is because there has not been a candidate who has outright run on the basis of environmental regulations, environmental protection, and won. The closest we have come to that is Al Gore, and he won the popular vote, but he lost the electoral college. Bottom line is that this is a huge win for environmentalists everywhere. We have literally been waiting for this since the 70s. So, yes, big deal. And while we talk about the different things that Biden will be able to do and might not be able to do, because there's a good chance that the Republicans are going to keep a hold on the Senate. So we'll talk about those different things that can be done with Biden for those 4 years. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, let's just set the scene here. With this new administration coming on, we are kind of changing our overall viewpoint, our national viewpoint, our national mentality around science. Because now we have a president-elect who trusts the science, and they trust the experts and what they're telling them. So that in itself is a really big difference, because now that we have this expectation that we should trust science and we should go with what the scientists are saying, that in itself will move us towards more progressive policy, because now we are listening to people who are discovering what works best for humanity. Crazy, it's big. This mentality will hopefully reverberate throughout government of all levels. So we're talking local, state, and national government. In addition to that, we have seen in this election local and state elections that have moved more towards environmentally and climate-focused policy, which is big too. So that's another win. So this is huge. By electing Joe Biden, over half of Americans, and it's been reported about 2/3 of Americans, which includes the majority of Republicans, have announced that climate change is a pressing issue that people want to see solved. That is what that means, and that is big. In the same vein, the Biden administration does seem to value what Heather Tomey, who is the senior director of Moms Clean Air Force and a former EPA regional administrator, she calls the GSD degree, which is basically get shit done. And so he being Biden is going to appoint people who he believes are going to get stuff done, which is really important, because as kind of a side note, in addition to the Trump administration really devaluing the job and role that science plays in our democracy, it also kind of devalued the role that politicians play. Because I get it, we all have our toughs with politicians, absolutely, but having a career-long politician in positions of power might be very important if they have learned the skills to communicate, provide leadership, and reach across the aisle in order to actually make things happen. They have played this game before and they know how best to play it. And so that is something that I think is going to kind of come back with the Biden administration a little bit, is we're going to have some more career-long politicians, because Biden knows that those are some of the people that can actually get stuff done. Another thing that is very important that has come from this election is that we're probably going to see the most diverse administration in a U.S. presidency ever. And that is crucial for good environmental policy, because we have seen from Black Lives Matter movements to climate marches that environmental justice is at the core of both of those movements. And now we're understanding more that a lot of problems that need to get solved at the same time. And so while some people might think that this is a terrible time to add another problem on, we've got the pandemic, we've got the economic crisis, we have healthcare crisis, we have racial justice problems, we have all these different issues to solve. But in fact, it might be a good thing that we're tackling climate change when all these problems are really hitting their crux, because then we can build back better in a way that is okay. Well, now that the presidential election has officially been called, I believe that it is time for a good old celebration. So let's just give ourselves so we're hopefully going to see the most diverse administration that we've ever seen, an administration that trusts science and hires people that are actually going to get the job done, an administration that will hopefully reach across the aisle and be more bipartisan than we have seen in the past, and I'll talk a little more about that later. So that being said, let's now take a more closer look now that we've hit those big parts of setting the scene. Now let's talk a little more about what Biden is able to do based on his own executive role and other powers that be. So the first one that we're going to talk about is his executive power. Well, the first thing, he is going to start by rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, and he's also going to rejoin the World Health Organization, which is very important because not only for the pandemic, but also because climate change causes a lot of health issues. A lot of things that are problematic right now coincide with climate change. So it's really important that we address multiple things at once. So anyways, so we are going to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. We're going to rejoin the World Health Organization. And specifically in Biden's plan, he talks about in the first 100 days some other more specific things that he wants to do internationally, one of which is banning hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs. And I will do a whole nother video on that because I realized that I haven't talked about that yet, and it's a really important topic because that is a point of greenhouse gas emissions that I feel like is not discussed enough, because it in itself would decrease our overall chance of warming by 0.5 degrees Celsius, which is huge. So anyway, I will get more into that, but that is one thing that he wants to cover is banning HFCs internationally. He also wants to talk about shipping and aviation regulations internationally because that spans across the world, you know. So those are some of the international aspects that he's talking about. He also discussed in his plan, which I talked about in a previous video, that he wants to specifically talk with China about reducing carbon emissions because China is the leading greenhouse gas emitter in the world. with the US being second. India's coming up pretty quick. So those are some things that he wants to do on the international scale. Now on the national scale, executively, he does have a little bit to play with, because right now we do actually have a lot of different pieces of legislation that can be framed to address the climate change issue. One sec, let me let my cat in. One of the pieces of legislation that's already in play that he can do something about is the Clean Air Act. By then putting greenhouse gas emissions on that sort of scale of reducing air pollution, then that would significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the Clean Air Act is one that he wants to make more climate oriented. He also wants to beef up the NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, which was made in 1970 to make stricter protocols for environmental regulation, as well as focusing on environmental justice sides. So those are just two examples of many legislative pieces that Biden can focus on to make bigger systemic change nationally. But possibly even more importantly, every single sector has a role to play when it comes to moving us towards a more environmentally friendly future. And that is something that Biden really wants to push on, and that other experts in the field also want him to push on. In fact, some Obama administration folks created what is called the Climate 21 project, and that is a 300-page recommendation to Biden's team on how he can properly utilize multiple different parts of the government and multiple different agencies in order to properly get stuff done. Now we are talking about everything from the Department of Agriculture to the Office of Management and Budget to the Department of the Interior to Justice to Defense. Everything has a role to play, and so when we are starting up this Biden administration, he is going to make sure that each agency, or he should make sure that each agency identifies where they can reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions and move us towards a more sustainable future. And if you would like to learn more about that Climate 21 project, because it is a whole nother thing, then go ahead and comment below Climate 21, and I will make a video diving deeper into some of the recommendations that some of Obama's previous appointees are suggesting for Biden's plan. Now, another thing that Biden needs to do is he needs to roll back some of Trump's rollbacks, because Trump and his administration has rolled back over 120 environmental regulations, which is crazy. Now, what's interesting is that some of the stuff that he will need to do will involve the okay from the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court is a very conservative one at that. So that's one area in which there might be a bit of a roadblock, is via the Supreme Court. Another place that there might be a roadblock is when we hit Congress, because Congress is in charge of enacting new legislation. Now, as I said before, there's already a lot of legislation at play. So even if we did not get the majority of the Senate, we would still be able to do a lot potentially. But it would be a lot easier if we did have the majority, we being the Democrats in this case. I'm an environmentalist. Do you expect me to not be a Democrat? I'm sorry, I've just given it up. I would love to be in a world where both parties are environmental, and so that wouldn't be so obvious. Anyways, so there is a lot that can be done if Democrats do not get the majority in the Senate because of that legislation that's already in play that I had mentioned before. But there are going to be points where new legislation will need to be voted on, and it would be a lot easier for Democrats to move on some of that stuff quicker if they were able to do some more sweeping, larger pieces of legislation if they had the majority in the Senate, so that Congress would be able to side with them when it comes to enacting some of that new legislation. However, that might not happen if Mitch McConnell stayed the Senate Majority Leader and plans to do the exact same thing that he did to Obama, which was block absolutely everything for the last 6 years of Obama's presidency. Which brings me into the final part, which is bipartisan push. One of the things that Biden has been prided on is that because he is a career-long politician, he has experience reaching across the aisle and engaging with people of different thoughts, different parties, etc. So there is a chance that even if Democrats did not get the Senate majority, that we would still be able to win favor in the Senate if Democrats help Republicans understand that it is in the constituents' best interest. So this is where we need to talk about climate change in terms of what is important to Republicans, because Republicans matter and everybody is involved in this climate conversation. So through beefing up the economy, getting new jobs, and infrastructure. So those parts definitely can get better through environmental legislation, and we just need to show that that is the case and hope that Republicans care more about what their constituents want than what Mitch McConnell wants. So those are some of the major aspects. It'll be interesting to see Georgia's re-election of those Senate seats, because that is the next thing, and that will be happening on January 5th, so look out for that. You better believe I'm going to be following that. Again, it's a huge win. It is a huge win for not just Democrats, but for the world. And with that, that is where I'm going to leave us for today. Thank you so much for coming and hearing me ramble about, you know, climate stuff as I do. If you have any thoughts, please go ahead and put them in the comments below. Let's go ahead and continue that conversation in the comments below, please. I really want to talk with you people. And if you want to see my face again this week, then check out my Climate Book Club series. We will be finishing up the book that we're currently reading called Don't Even Think About It by George Marshall. I will leave more information regarding that below, as well as look on my social media, which is also linked below, because I will be doing a poll on what the next book is that we should read, and I would love your input on that. So without further ado, thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.